A New York judge could soon unseal the names of nearly 200 people allegedly connected to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
The list could reveal the identity of several high-profile people that were listed as John and Jane Doe in court documents up until this point. Epstein, of course, died in prison or jail in New York in 2019 while awaiting the federal trial for sex trafficking. His death was ruled a suicide.
And joining us now to talk about the very latest in this case that has these developments, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. Hey, Matt, what's the latest?
Hi, good morning to you both. Yeah, I keep on hitting refresh, waiting for it to be published. We're talking about a list, a very large list, 150 to 200 names connected to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. It could be released as early as this morning. This after the deadline for the objections to releasing the list expired overnight. The identities of dozens of associates connected to the sex trafficking conspiracy could be exposed. The document stemming from a civil suit 9 years ago when alleged sex trafficking victim Virginia Giuffre filed a defamation claim against Maxwell. She produced a list of names in deposition and has also settled a civil suit against British Prince Andrew outside of court. Here's what she had to say about that.
What do you make of Prince Andrew's denials? Can you comment on that? You said you won't be silenced. He has been outspoken.
He knows what he's done, and he can attest to that. So,
can you repeat that? We can't hear you. Step up.
He knows exactly what he's done, and I hope he comes clean about it.
Prince Andrew has denied any wrongdoing. The list of names expected to be released today include associates, co-conspirators, former employees, alleged perpetrators, and alleged victims. As we know, as you just said, Epstein died by suicide before going to trial. Maxwell was convicted and serving a 20-year sentence. She is appealing that verdict. Julia, Ted?
All right, thank you, Matt. It's going to be interesting to see those names. Obviously, let's talk about it more with trial attorney, former police lieutenant Rick King. You know, the names being released to the public it's interesting, and people are going to have their opinions. But it's not as though law enforcement and prosecutors, they've known this all along. This is not new information for the investigation, so people shouldn't think, oh, there's going to be charges. No, this is, you know, this is just, hey guys, look who was on Jeffrey's weirdo plane.
Who were his friends?
Yeah. Rick, do you think there's, I mean, is this just maybe a civil action? I don't even see that, because everyone knows, like everyone on that list knows they were on the list, likely, and law enforcement knows who's on that list.
Right. Yeah, right now what you have is just a bunch of people super nervous about their names being put out in the paper. Other than that, I mean, you're right, Ted. Very little will come of it as a result of the release of these names at this point, because, like you said, everybody who's on that list already knows they're on the list. Law enforcement is known, and if there was going to be civil actions, I'm sure they would have been filed by now. This is just, like I said, a lot of people sitting and hitting refresh, like Matt said, waiting to see if their name pops up.
No, you know, it's about transparency, I think would be the argument about why this needs to come forward. This was a case that was shrouded in a lot of secrecy up until the point when it was all revealed what was going on. So I think that's another peg of this. Now, Florida, we know, is where some of these things happened. Florida is where Ghislaine Maxwell is serving out her prison sentence. I was in New York for her sentencing, and then she was then transferred to prison. But Rick, you're there in Florida. What's the sentiment of the impact that this case has had, just something that's been looked at on such a wide international scale?
I mean, I'm here in Palm Beach County. And so because it's Palm Beach County, there's a huge, following of what's going on, and people want to know here. I mean, this case actually, it touched our sheriff's office here in that, there was a release of Jeffrey Epstein from jail at some point. It touched kind of everyone, and there's really nobody who was involved in the case who right now, people want to know. They want to know who these people are, and they want to know what their involvement was. And it's more of right now, it's the centerpiece of attention, because people want to know. And like you said, it's about transparency. And I think that when you give people and the public the information that they want to know, I think that's what journalism is about. And I think that's what people are waiting for.
This case, more than any in recent memory, is one of those where everybody just shrugs off and says, oh yeah, rich, powerful people, they get to conceal stuff. Because we didn't get to hear and see all of it, right? And even Epstein's death had a whole shroud of, there's a conspiracy theorist that believed that he was murdered. It's one of those cases that makes the general public sort of angry, right, at the plight of all of us low-lying people, thinking, oh, the rich and powerful get treated differently, and this judge said no. Let's let them out. And to that, I think there will be a little bit of some faith in the system, I guess.
I mean, when you think about it, just the information around his death. When you're in jail, there's a responsibility of the correctional officers to monitor the inmates. I mean, I know in Palm Beach County here, we have 15-minute checks. Those deputies are required to walk around and check those inmates every 15 minutes to make sure what's going on. So when you hear that someone was able to do this and take their own life in the jail, you start looking back internally about what happened. And I think those facts, when people know those things and they wonder, well, how did this happen? It leads to that whole conspiracy type understanding or theory of what may have happened inside the jail and how it is that Jeffrey Epstein came to fall that type of death.
Yeah, that's so true. What you were saying, Ted, about if this had been any other case, everything would have been out in the open, and we would have known. I mean, look at what we're hearing about in what's coming up next, the Young Thug trial. You've got all of these people who were listed, and we're going to know about it in a case that is in a courtroom that has cameras. This happened in New York where they don't have cameras. But Lieutenant King, I want to talk to you about the victims in this case. When I was there for Maxwell's sentencing, you saw them come out in full force, and they were willing to tell their story, talking about just how important this was to see her, even though she didn't take responsibility for her role. She did say that she regretted their pain. Does a release like this, an unsealing of people's names who may have been associated with Epstein, may not have been criminally responsible, but were part of people who may have been protecting him, does that help the victims with their healing, or does this just open up the wounds again, in your opinion?
So first, I haven't been Lieutenant King in about almost 15 years now, but thank you for that. I appreciate that. But what you find in these cases is that it gives some validity to what the people are saying when stories that they've told, there's people now, names being released that validate what they said all along. And I think in some ways it gives them that feeling of validity and closure. It allows them to move on with their lives. For other people, Julia, I think it opens the wound again. Everybody handles these things a little bit differently. Like, for me personally, I prefer things that cause me pain I prefer to close the door and not go back. Some people need that catharsis, that type of healing where they need to have their pain and their story validated. And I think for some people, this will help them.
Yeah. I know the people on the list are not going to be happy because let's face it, of the 150 people, there's no way that all 150 people did anything wrong, right? There would be people on the list that went on Jeffrey Epstein's plane for business reasons, whatever, maybe went to the island, had nothing to do with young underage girls, et cetera, et cetera.
How are we going to learn that from the list? Is it going to be clear?
Is it, or is it just a big list? And for those people that did nothing wrong, it's going to be difficult as well. So I guess we'll progress and see where it takes us. But the good news is that there is a little sunlight now on this case that has been concealed for so long.
This is one of the
Action 7 News.
Hundreds of documents were recently unsealed in a civil suit against Jeffrey Epstein. He was the billionaire who had a mansion here in New Mexico and was accused of trafficking underage girls before he killed himself in jail.
For the past several days, Target 7 has been combing through those documents, and tonight we uncover some of the secrets inside the mansion. Here's John Cardinale.
Last week, more than 160 documents were unsealed. Some of them had hundreds of pages. In them, our team found that New Mexico and the mansion were mentioned more than 24 times as being a place where some horrific acts were occurring. This was Jeffrey Epstein's mansion before it was recently sold for an undisclosed amount. Nestled in rural Santa Fe County, the Zorro Ranch shows the beautiful landscapes of New Mexico. But what is said to occur in these recently unsealed documents is far from beautiful. This is how our elected leaders have characterized it in the past.
There was questionable conduct on that ranch.
It's just, kind of a disgusting realization about what occurred in that building.
More than 900 pages of documents released last week describing some of those disgusting details that occurred here. They are a part of a civil suit by this woman, Virginia Giuffre, against Ghislaine Maxwell. Maxwell, a longtime acquaintance of Epstein, is currently serving prison time for child sex trafficking.
It is information that had been kept sealed for a long time.
In these documents, Giuffre says she was recruited at the age of 16 to give what was called massages inside Epstein's estate to the rich and powerful. These massages are alleged in the documents to include nudity, sex acts, and sex toys. The documents include depositions taken from Giuffre and other women who gave massages. They allege that Epstein himself was getting them 3 times a day with 3 different women inside the ranch.
There are allegations by these women that a lot of activity took place not only at Epstein's private island in the Caribbean, but also at the New Mexico ranch.
And he would have some of the women give massages to some of his guests. In the documents, one woman said she stayed here as a sex slave starting at age 15. At another point, Giuffre said nude photos were taken of her, and she met a president of a foreign country here in New Mexico. His name was still sealed, and one woman alleged she was forced to have sex with prominent people.
New Mexico plays a prominent role in the Epstein story because of the relationship with former Governor Richardson, 2, with the fact that Epstein had this large, opulent ranch in southern Santa Fe County that apparently he visited a lot of times with a lot of the people named in these documents.
One of the people who were reported to have stayed here was world-renowned attorney and Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. He has denied in court filings of ever having any sexual relations with underage girls. Many others are named in the documents, also denying the accusations. They include former Governor Bill Richardson, former President Bill Clinton, and Prince Andrew. While some are accused of getting massages, there's no direct accusations of criminal activity with underage girls.
It's definitely a list that these people wish they weren't on.
The documents detail how some people were flown into the ranch on a small plane using this landing strip. KOAT legal expert John Day says more details are likely to come out in the years to come. There are 8 other civil suits that have been filed by alleged victims.
And the New Mexico connection to Jeffrey Epstein is continuing. The more names that come out, the more documents that are released. I think we'll see a lot more references to New Mexico.
Target 7 combed through the documents and found about 27 references to New Mexico. In Maxwell's subpoenaed emails alone, she mentions the state 64 times. More documents are expected to be released, and we're continuing to search through them to find more connections to the land of enchantment. For Target 7, I'm John Cardinelli.
Thursday.